This is the review for populations, part 2. So just a quick slides that we missed out on. For populations, don't forget the age pyramids as you see here. Make sure you know some examples of each, and we can see here this triangle looking pyramid shows that there will be rapid growth. So you can predict there will be rapid growth in this population because when you look at the young people, obviously they're in larger quantities than the older people. And so if I take the corner of it and I move it up as they get older, right, and move into reproductive years, obviously they're going to then add to this pyramid. Okay, so you have rapid growth there. In the slow growth, there's still growth here because you can see here that you still have, even though less than this one, you still have more young people than older people. So as those young people grow into reproductive age, they also will be adding to that population. Zero growth would be when the amount of young people equals the amount of those who are older. And you can see here that as they move up, I'm not really doing any changes. So zero growth basically means stable. Negative growth, you can see that the base here of younger people is much smaller than the older people. So as they grow older, you're actually cutting through that population, and therefore that population will diminish in size. And so the rapid growth, countries here are developing. They might be starting to go through their industrialization. They might be rural in setting, while then the developed nations can be any one of these three. In terms of the United States, we know that we have pretty much stable, but we still grow because we take in migrants. We accept migration. While here, for example, like Japan is a country with negative growth because you have less kids being born. So you have an elderly population. And so this ties into understanding also the impact that a population can have. And so we can calculate that by the population times the affluence, which is a consumption per person, and also the impact, which is per unit of consumption, and that's really the technology available for that population. And so all these factors come into place in terms of our overall impact on the environment. And so even though China has such a large population, they do not have the affluence or the impact per consumption like we do. And so we have a large quantity of all three factors. And so that's why our impact is larger. Make sure you know some math. And so remember, you will not be given any kind of math sheet, so you need to memorize these formulas. And even though our AP exam this year will be FRQ style, that does not mean you can't have math in there. And so chances are you could easily have these as one of the problems. So make sure you're able to calculate all of these population equations. This was another one, the rule of 70. Remember, that is used to predict how long will a population take to double in size. And you take 70 divided by R, and R is always a percentage. And if you have any questions with these, I probably will put some math on there so that you can practice that as well. Might do an extra video on that. All right, and then the total fertility rate is the average number of children that a woman can have in her lifetime. And so we know that in order for population to remain stable, meaning it doesn't increase or decrease, we need to be able to basically have enough kids where we can replace mom and dad, right? So the number there should be at 2.1 to replace mom and dad in a family. If you have a decreasing population, then that number would obviously be less than 2.1. while increasing population would be higher than 2.1. Factors affecting total fertility rate: obviously the industrialization of that country, as women also have access not just to the workplace, but also to education, to family planning. The age of the woman also obviously determines how many children she'll probably have. And also don't forget quality of health care. Because if you don't have good health care and you have, for example, high infant mortality, if you have kids dying because, for example, let's say you don't have access to vaccines, then women typically will have then more kids to make up for that. And lastly, we want to remember the demographic transition model. And so here, don't forget you have 4 stages, right? The pre-industrial stage, okay, where you have birth rates and death rates are equal. You can see how they're intertwined here. And because they're equal, you really have no growth in the population. This is a very stable part of the demographic transition model. These are mostly rural, right? A lot of farming, obviously pre-industrial, tribal even. The second stage is what we would call the transitional stage. Here you have the beginnings of industrialization, so food is going to become more plentiful, and so you have higher sanitation, which will lead that death rate to go down. And so this, though, you can see that the birth rate still remains up. And the reason the birth rate still remains high is because women still don't have access to birth control. They are still not educated. They're possibly not even in the workforce. And so this is a dangerous part of this transition, because you can see how the population booms. This is what you would call the population explosion. So a lot of developing countries that are beginning to go through the industrialization, like in India, for example, some in Africa, are going through their transition. And so their population is booming. We want to get them quickly then to the industrial age, which is the third section here. Here the death rates are still low. You have, good health care. You're industrialized already. So people are not dying like they used to. You have vaccines, medicine. But now this birth rate is going to come down drastically. And that really is because women have opportunities in the workforce, they're educated, and they're having access to birth control, basically family planning. And so this is where, even though the population, of course, is still increasing slightly, it's going to start to level off into the post-industrial, which is where you see that the birth rate and the death rates are equal. Once again, they're both going to be low. And so you can see the population leveling off. And so people are living longer, there's fewer babies being born. And so these, make sure you know examples of countries, and make sure you know the characteristics of each. All right, so then that's it for population. Like I said, I'm still finding out what exactly will be on this AP exam, but as I know more, I'll be giving you some examples on how to better prepare for that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this, and have a great day.